The First Amendment of the United States Constitution protects all of the following freedoms for American citizens: freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, and the right to petition the government. This sounds good, but in reality, freedom of speech really isn't free. You're not allowed to run into the airport and yell bomb. You're not allowed to go into a movie theater and yell fire, unless those things are true. But if not, your ass is gonna go to jail. Lately, there's been many discussions on the ethics of freedom of speech, especially on these social media platforms where everybody and anybody is allowed to speak their minds and their opinions on certain topics, whether they're right or not. People are allowed to upload, post, tweet, or whatever on these social media platforms and say what they want, facts or not. The Supreme Court has heard many cases about the First Amendment rights on these social media platforms. For example, the court has considered whether or not government bodies or entities are allowed to ban or block people on these social media platforms. It has also considered whether or not government entities are allowed to regulate what type of content is on these platforms as well. It is also considered whether blocking somebody on a social media platform is a state action that falls under the First Amendment. The First Amendment is the most challenged amendment in our Constitution. People's first right amendments is always being violated, or somebody's violating their First Amendment right of others. Whether they're trying to keep people from saying certain things, believing in certain religions, assembling, or petitioning the government, the First Amendment right is always being challenged by some entity in our nation. In today's video, we're going to talk about how a then local underground comics artist First Amendment right was violated to the upteenth degree. In 1988, 19-year-old Mike Diana was working as an elementary school janitor in Largo, Florida, where he would use the school's copy machine to print out his magazine, Boiled Angel, which was a very grotesque and vile zine, showing lots of things even myself would find disturbing. All that being said, it had garnished a small cult following of about 300 subscribers from around the United States, thanks to reviews and write-ups of Diana's zine in Fact Sheet 5, which was a periodical mostly consisting of short reviews of privately produced printed matter along with contact details of the editors and publishers, helping the wider spread of what would eventually be called fanzine or zine culture. After a few years and issues of Boiled Angel later, Mike Diana would end up mailing a copy of his comic to California, thinking he was mailing it to a fan. Little did Diana know his comic was being mailed to the hands of a California police officer. Parts of Diana's comic reminded the officer of the Gainesville student murders. This comic also got the attention of the FBI. Diana, for a short moment, was seen as a suspect in the Gainesville student murders, which was quickly cleared up after Diana provided a blood sample to the FBI.
Christmas of '91, I had the Florida Department of Law Enforcement came to me and they had a copy of number 6 that I did, and they were telling me that because of that issue I did as a suspect in the Gainesville student murders. There was 5 students murdered in Gainesville and they hadn't found the killer yet at the time. And someone that I had sent it to in California sent it back to the police here in Florida, and they figured, since because of the drawings that were in it, that I could have been a killer or something. I'm hoping some killer, I wish like Dahmer had copies of it in his apartment or something, so it would have been good for publicity and stuff.
The FBI still forwarded their information on Diana and his work to Pinellas County Sheriff's Office in Florida. Even though Diana was ruled out as a suspect in the Gainesville student murders, he still was not in the clear. Diana was still charged by Pinellas County Court with 3 counts of obscenity, publishing, distributing, and advertising obscene material. After again mailing out a copy of his comic to an undercover Florida police officer, Michael Flores, who had been repeatedly contacting Diana through the mail, pretending to be a fan in order to get a copy of the zine. More on that later.
After I printed 7 and 8, it was about a year later when I finally got the summons to be in court. So it took them a long time to decide to prosecute the case. I don't think anyone was willing to take the case until Stuart Baggish came across the magazines, and he himself is some kind of a comic book collector. And I think it just personally offended him when he saw the material at the clerk's office, and so he decided he wanted to prosecute the case.
According to the Supreme Court, Content is considered obscene if it meets the following three-pronged test. It appeals to the average person's prudent interest. It depicts or describes sexual content in a blatantly offensive way. It lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Obscenity is not protected by the First Amendment. However, in the third prong, as long as the art has serious value, it will be protected under the First Amendment. So, how was it fair for the Pinellas County Court to say that Boiled Angel had no serious artistic value? It must have. If you've read the comic, you'd see that Diana was making semi-political statements about religion and government. People were buying the comics, so it had some monetary value as well. That's how the book got into the hands of the police officer in the first place, right? Now, this is insane. Imagine being 19 years old in your edgy edgelord phase, and all you want to do is just make comics. No matter how crazy or grotesque the idea is, that is your right to do so under the First Amendment. Now imagine you make this comic and it's finally getting some traction. You're finally getting people who are fans of your book and are ordering your book from all over the country. And one of those copies of your comic gets you in some serious legal trouble. This is wild. The trial. Diana contacted the nonprofit First Amendment organization, the Comicbook Legal Defense Fund, which provided him with a lawyer, Luke Riot, and paid Diana's legal fees, which would later total into $10,000. The Riot tried to get the case dismissed as he argued that Officer Michael Flores' letters counted as entrapment, but this angle failed. Diana's legal team also tried and failed to get the trial moved to Tampa, Florida, where Diana felt he would get a more sympathetic jury.
The whole trial, from beginning to end is such a long process. It was charged in 93. And it wasn't until late 94 when I was actually charged, when I was, found guilty. It goes through red tape, and tried to get it dismissed and tried to get it moved to Tampa, which is a closer city, which we figured to be more liberal. And you try lots of things, Tried to claim that because it was sent through the U.S. mail, it would be up to the U.S. Postal Service to bust me for obscenity, because it was sent through the mail, and that didn't work,
In March 1994, the trial began. The then Assistant State's Attorney Stuart Baggish argued that Diana's work was obscene in a way that easily available teen horror movie was not, because the latter portrays violence in a grotesque way, but it does not portray sex in a blatantly offensive way.
Perfect example of obscenity law dealt in laboratory sterility.
During the trial, Baggish showed drawings from the Boiled Angel zine, which, according to Leroy, the jury was visibly disgusted by the examples. Baggish also called as a witness Tampa psychologist Sidney Murrin, who stated that peoples of questionable personality strains could be aroused by the comic. The prosecution made it a point to inform the jury that Mike was a suspect in the Gainesville student murders, even though the real killer Donnie Rollins was caught and pleaded guilty before Diana's trial started. Baggish also told the jury that if Diana wasn't stopped, he could become a mass murderer or turn people into killers. Baggish also went as far as to compare Diana to Donnie Rollins some more, stating, "This is how Donnie Rollins got started. Step 1, you start with the drawings. Step 2, you go on to the pictures. Step 3 is the movies. And step 4, you're in reality. You're creating these scenes in reality." Diana testified for over 3 hours to explain his art to the jury, but it all fell on deaf ears, because after 1 week of trial and 90 minutes of deliberation, Mike Diana was found guilty of obscenity, making Diana the first artist to receive this conviction in the United States. Diana was thrown in jail for 4 days without bail until sentencing, which usually doesn't happen for someone who was convicted with a misdemeanor. Diana was also given 3 years of supervised probation, fined $3,000, $1,000 for each count, 1,248 hours of community service. He was also told to avoid contact with minors.
$1 fine, 3 years worth of community service work. Can't have any contact with minors. Have to take a journalism ethics course at my own cost so I can be a serious journalist.
And if you think that's bad, just wait, because it gets worse. The judge also ordered Diana to follow a state-supervised psychiatric evaluation at his own expense to take an ethics and journalism class, and he ruled that he was to submit to unannounced, warrantless searches of his personal papers by the police and deputized probation officers by the Salvation Army, which will allow them to seize any drawings or writings Diana would produce. Many comic artists saw Diana's sentencing as outrageous, getting the support from Neil Gaiman, Scott McCloud, and Peter David. A few years after his sentencing, Diana was allowed to move to New York, where he served his community service obligations by volunteering with the Comicbook Legal Defense Fund. Mike also volunteered at the Lower East Side Community Garden and another 6 hours per week at God's Love We Deliver, a group that delivers food to HIV patients. Diana tried to appeal his court 2 times during his period of probation, but both of those times failed to get his case reversed or reheard in Florida. Before Diana's probation officer quit the Salvation Army's run probation department, she told the court that Diana had violated his probation, still owing $2,000 in fines. A warrant for his arrest was put out in Florida. Mike Diana spent 26 years on probation, finally getting off of probation in February of 2020. This man went through all of this just for making a comic book. So like I said earlier in the video, the First Amendment is the most challenged amendment in our Constitution. It's also the most cited, probably the most popular amendment that people always like to say, like, oh, it's my right to say this and my right to do that. And like I also said, freedom of speech is not free. You're not allowed to just say stuff about people or institutions without hard, cold facts. It's kind of a double-edged sword and a double whammy when it comes to these rights. Obviously, Mike was screwed over. The town that he was getting trial in, a lot of, this small town in Florida, you could tell that it's probably a more conservative type town. A lot of people were probably Christian beliefs and religions. So when they saw these drawings and writings, they weren't going for it. Art is subjective. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to all these art, and things of that nature. So if you don't understand it, doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's evil or demonic. It's just you don't get it, and you don't have to get it, but you should tolerate that. Tolerate what it is. That's for anything. I am in the belief that you don't have to accept everything, but you should tolerate and allow people to do what they want. As long as you're not hurting you or hurting yourself, you should do what you want. Life is short. The First Amendment rights, especially when it comes to art, it's always been violated, whether it was like people protesting rock and roll in the 80s or rap music in the 90s. And today it's just like a whole heap of stuff that people protest. It's just, choose what you want. People protesting Disney or freaking, women doing stuff or trans, and, people. It's just a bunch of shit. So, it's really interesting. It sucks that Mike had to go through this and he had to be made an example of for no other reason other than him just making a comic book that looks like Super Jail. If you ever watch Super Jail on Adult Swim, it's pretty much the same thing.
I just don't see why we need all these expensive weapons, sir.
That's why you're not the warden, Jared.
It's really just weird, and it's interesting how this always seems to happen in history, where an artist is always getting challenged for his work. A musician, actor, actress, journalist, they're always getting pushed back for the things they put out there, even if they lay out facts about what they're saying or whatever the case is. There's always something. But before we go, I just want to say that I am a comic book artist myself, a comic book creator. I have a book that's in print right now. It is Nobody Safe. It is my underground Doinchi Spider-Man comic. I have a few copies left on my website. After I sell out, there won't be no more print. So if you want to get a copy, get one now. You can also just read the book digitally for free on my website. The link is in the description. Go check it out. It's 52 pages of just action-packed, grungy Spider-Man type comic, So yeah, go check it out and let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.